What kind of man leaves his disabled wife alone in the middle of a forest and drives away forever? That's exactly what Marcus Chen did on a cold October morning. But what he didn't know was that someone was watching from the shadows, someone who had been waiting in those woods for 30 years. What happened next would expose a decades-old conspiracy worth millions and prove that some secrets never stay buried. Let us know where you're watching from. Marcus Chen sat in his BMW outside the Whispering Pines National Forest, watching his wife Sarah struggle with her wheelchair on the uneven ground. The morning mist clung to the towering evergreens, creating an ethereal atmosphere that masked his sinister intentions. He had told her they were here for a nature therapy session, something her physical therapist had recommended after the car accident that had paralyzed her from the waist down 18 months ago. "Just a little further, honey," Marcus called. "Out," his voice dripping with false encouragement as he guided her deeper into the woods. Sarah trusted him completely, her face lighting up despite the effort it took to navigate the rough forest path. She had no idea that her husband of 12 years had already cancelled her life insurance claim appointment, withdrawn their joint savings, and told his mistress they'd be together by nightfall. What Marcus didn't notice was the figure watching from behind a massive Douglas fir, barely 50 yards away. Eleanor Blackwood, a 67-year-old woman with piercing green eyes and silver hair braided down her back, had been living in these woods for decades. She moved silently through the forest. She knew better than anyone, her calloused hands gripping a walking stick carved from oak. She had seen many things in her years of solitude, but nothing had prepared her for what she was about to witness. As Marcus led Sarah to a small clearing near an abandoned ranger station, Eleanor noticed something that made her blood run cold. The way he kept checking his watch, the calculated distance from the main trail, the rope in his jacket pocket. She had seen this pattern before, in this very same spot. Her hand instinctively went to the scar on her neck, a reminder of the night she had barely escaped with her life. "This is perfect," Sarah said, unaware of the danger, admiring the peaceful surroundings. "Thank you for bringing me here, Marcus. I know things have been hard since the accident." Marcus forced a smile, his hand reaching for the rope. But Eleanor had already made her decision. Some secrets in these woods had waited long enough to be revealed. The accident that changed everything had happened on a rainy Tuesday evening. Sarah Chen had been driving home from her job as a pediatric surgeon at St. Mary's Hospital when a drunk driver ran a red light, crushing the driver's side of her Volvo. She survived, but her L3 and L4 vertebrae were severely damaged, leaving her paralyzed below the waist. In an instant, the woman who had spent 12 hours a day saving children's lives found herself unable to walk to her own mailbox. Marcus had initially been the devoted husband everyone expected. He took leave from his real estate development firm, learned how to help with physical therapy exercises, and modified their colonial home with ramps and accessible bathrooms. Friends praised his dedication, and Sarah's colleagues sent cards calling him a saint. But behind closed doors, resentment was growing like a cancer. The medical bills were staggering. Even with Sarah's excellent insurance, they faced over $200,000 in out-of-pocket expenses. The experimental treatments in Switzerland that might restore partial mobility cost another $400,000. Marcus watched their savings evaporate, their retirement dreams vanish, and his plans for expanding his business crumble. He had married a successful surgeon, not what he cruelly thought of as a burden. Then came Rebecca. She was everything Sarah no longer could be: able-bodied, adventurous, and most importantly, wealthy from her recent divorce settlement. She promised Marcus a life of traveling, skiing in Aspen, sailing in the Caribbean, all the things he felt he'd been cheated out of. "You've sacrificed enough," Rebecca would whisper during their secret meetings. "No one would blame you for wanting your life back." The final straw came when Sarah's recovery plateaued. The doctors said she had made all the progress she was likely to make. This was her new reality: permanent disability, chronic pain, and dependence on others for countless daily tasks. Marcus saw his future stretched out before him. Decades of caregiving, medical appointments, and watching other couples live the life he wanted. That's when he started researching. How do people disappear? What happens when someone goes missing in a national forest? The plan formed slowly, each detail carefully considered. Make it look like she wandered off during a nature excursion. Her depression was well documented, no one would question it. The idea had come to Marcus during a particularly difficult night when Sarah's pain medication wasn't working, and she'd kept him awake until dawn. Scrolling through his phone, he'd found an article about people who vanished in national parks, over 1,600 unsolved cases. The Whispering Pines forest alone had 17 disappearances in the past 50 years. The vast wilderness, with its deep ravines and dense undergrowth, could swallow a person whole. His research became obsessive. He learned that search and rescue operations typically lasted 72 hours for disabled individuals before scaling back. The forest's cellular dead zones meant no phone tracking. Heavy October rains would wash away evidence. He discovered an abandoned ranger station, closed since the 1960s, located 3 miles from any marked trail. Perfect isolation. Marcus's real estate connections proved useful. His friend at the county office mentioned that Whispering Pines had sections that even experienced rangers avoided. Areas where the terrain was too treacherous, where old mine shafts from the 1800s created hidden dangers. One area, nicknamed the Devil's Hollow by locals, was particularly notorious. Compasses spun wildly there and GPS units gave false readings. "You'd have to be insane to go in there alone," his friend had laughed over beers. "Even the search teams won't risk it, without specialized equipment." But Marcus's plan had a cruel elegance. He would take Sarah to the forest edge, claim she wanted to prove her independence by wheeling herself on the trail while he prepared lunch at the car. When he returned to find her gone, he'd raise the alarm immediately. The devoted husband, frantic with worry. The wheelchair would be found near Devil's Hollow, suggesting she'd gotten disoriented and ventured into the dangerous area. Rebecca had unknowingly solidified his resolve during their last meeting. "I've put an offer on that beach house in Malibu," she'd said, showing him photos on her phone. "The seller wants a quick close. It could be ours." She'd looked at him meaningfully. "But I won't wait forever, Marcus. I need a man who's free to share my life." 3 days later, Marcus suggested the forest trip to Sarah. "Your therapist is right," he'd said, feigning enthusiasm. "Nature has healing properties. Let's try something different." Sarah's face had lit up with hope, the first genuine smile he'd seen in months. The morning of October 15th arrived with an unseasonable chill. Marcus loaded Sarah's wheelchair into the SUV with practiced efficiency, along with a picnic basket he'd never intend to open. He'd chosen this date carefully, a Thursday when forest traffic would be minimal and weather reports predicted afternoon storms that would complicate any search efforts. "I'm so excited," Sarah said as they drove through the winding mountain roads. "Remember our hiking trips before—" She trailed off, touching her legs reflexively. "Well, before." Marcus gripped the steering wheel tighter. "This is a new beginning," he said, the double meaning lost on his trusting wife. He'd already texted Rebecca from a burner phone. "Today's the day. Be ready to leave tomorrow." They reached the forest entrance at 9:47 a.m. Marcus made sure the ranger at the gate saw them, even chatting about the beautiful weather and their plans for a leisurely morning. He needed witnesses who could confirm Sarah was alive and happy when they entered. The ranger, a young woman named Beth, even commented on what a devoted husband he was, helping his disabled wife enjoy nature. The drive to the secluded area took another 40 minutes. Marcus had scouted this location 3 times, memorizing every detail. The abandoned ranger station sat in a clearing surrounded by dense forest, with Devil's Hollow beginning just beyond a stand of ancient pines. He parked precisely where he'd planned, visible from the access road, but far enough that no one would randomly stumble upon them. "This is beautiful," Sarah breathed, taking in the misty forest scene. "So peaceful." Marcus helped her into the wheelchair, his movements mechanical, already distancing himself emotionally from what he was about to do. The rope in his jacket pocket wasn't for violence. He wasn't a monster, he told himself. It was to tie the wheelchair to a tree near Devil's Hollow after she was gone, making it look like she'd gotten stuck and abandoned it in desperation. "Why don't you explore that trail while I set up our picnic?" he suggested, pointing toward the forest edge. "Take your time. Enjoy the solitude." Sarah looked uncertain. "Are you sure? The ground looks pretty rough." "You're stronger than you think," Marcus said, the manipulation wrapped in encouragement. The therapist said, "Independence is important, remember? I'll be right here." As Sarah wheeled herself slowly toward the trees, Marcus checked his watch. 10:34 a.m. In exactly 1 hour, he would discover her missing and call 911 in hysteria. Every second was planned. Neither of them noticed Eleanor Blackwood emerging from the shadows. Eleanor had been watching since they'd arrived, her face grim with recognition. The abandoned ranger station, she knew it too well. It had been her former workplace when she was Eleanor Matthews, one of the first female rangers in Whispering Pines. Before the night that changed everything. Before she'd learned that some monsters wore human faces and wedding rings. As Sarah struggled with her wheelchair on the uneven ground, Eleanor made a decision that would shatter Marcus's carefully laid plans. She stepped out from behind a massive cedar directly into Sarah's path. "Oh!" Sarah gasped, startled by the sudden appearance of the wild-looking woman. Eleanor's clothes were a patchwork of forest survival: deerskin jacket, worn military surplus pants, boots repaired with strips of tire rubber. But her eyes were sharp, intelligent, and filled with urgent purpose. "You need to listen to me very carefully," Eleanor said, her voice rusty from disuse but commanding. "Your husband is planning to leave you here. I've seen this pattern before." Sarah's initial fear transformed into confusion, then skepticism. "I'm sorry, who are you? How could you possibly know?" "Someone who survived what you're about to face," Eleanor replied, glancing back toward where Marcus waited by the car, checking his phone. "I know this sounds insane, but in this exact spot, another man brought his wife here, said they were rekindling their romance. Instead, he left her to die." "You're mistaken," Sarah said, but something in Eleanor's eyes made her pause. "Marcus would never check his jacket pocket when he comes to help you," Eleanor interrupted. "There's rope there. Ask yourself why a man brings rope on a romantic nature outing with his paralyzed wife." Sarah felt her world tilting. "You're wrong. Marcus loves me." He's been taking care of me since you became a burden. Eleanor's words were harsh but not cruel. Tell me, does he have a life insurance policy on you? Has he been secretive about money lately? New friends he doesn't introduce you to? Each question hit like a physical blow. Sarah thought of the mysterious phone calls Marcus took in the garage, the unexplained withdrawals from their joint account he'd claimed were for medical equipment, the way he'd insisted on increasing her life insurance just in case last month. Even if you're right, Sarah's voice broke. What can I do? I can't exactly run away. She gestured helplessly at her wheelchair. Eleanor smiled grimly. You don't need to run. You need to survive. And I'm going to teach you how. Eleanor quickly wheeled Sarah deeper into the forest, following a path invisible to untrained eyes. Behind them, they could hear Marcus calling out, his voice shifting from casual to concerned to frantic as he realized Sarah hadn't gone where he'd directed her. Sarah, where are you? This isn't funny! His shouts echoed through the trees. Eleanor led them to a cleverly concealed shelter built into a hillside, camouflaged with living moss and branches. Inside, the space opened up into a surprisingly comfortable dwelling. Years of careful construction had created a home that was part bunker, part botanical garden. My God, Sarah breathed, taking in the walls lined with preserved foods, medical supplies and journals. You've been living here all this time? Hiding, Eleanor corrected, securing the entrance. From the man who tried to kill me, and from those who helped him cover it up. She moved to a trunk and pulled out a faded photograph. A younger Eleanor, in a ranger uniform standing next to a handsome man. Richard Richmond, my husband, investment banker, charity board member, everyone's favorite dinner party guest. Sarah studied the photo, still struggling to process everything. What happened? I discovered he was embezzling from his clients, elderly people who trusted him with their life savings. When I confronted him, he convinced me to come here to talk things through. Instead, he pushed me into an old mine shaft. Eleanor pulled down her collar, revealing thick scars. The fall didn't kill me, but the broken wooden beams nearly did. Took me 3 days to climb out. But surely the police... Eleanor laughed bitterly. Richard reported me as a suicide. Depressed. Wife, history of anxiety, left a note, which he forged. By the time I made it back to civilization, he'd already had me declared dead. I tried to prove my identity, but Richard had connections. A judge who owed him favors declared me mentally unstable. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the forest cold. So you stayed hidden? I had found something during my first year here, Eleanor explained. Gold coins from an old heist, hidden by the criminals who'd turned on each other. I used it carefully, solar panels, equipment, supplies, enough to survive and document every crime that happens in these woods. You said you've seen this pattern before? Eleanor nodded, pulling out a journal. Your husband isn't the first to try this. Over the years, I've documented 17 attempted murders in these woods. The forest is where people think they can make problems disappear. Eleanor pulled out a specific journal, its leather binding worn smooth. Let me show you something that might help you understand. This was Dr. James Morrison, 2018. His wife brought him camping, then claimed he wandered off with dementia. I watched her put sedatives in his coffee. I was able to leave anonymous tips that led to his rescue, but she was never prosecuted. Not enough evidence. Sarah stared at the meticulous documentation, her analytical mind finally accepting the truth. Why didn't you ever come forward with all this? A homeless woman ranting about conspiracies? Who would believe me? Eleanor's voice was matter of fact. But I saved who I could. Left clues for search parties, made anonymous calls from stolen phones. I became the ghost of these woods. And Richard, your husband? Eleanor's expression darkened. Still living his life. Remarried to a senator's daughter, runs Richmond Capital now, major investment firm. Sarah gasped. Richmond Capital managed part of her hospital's pension fund. But here's what you need to know, Eleanor continued, pulling out a newer journal. I've been watching your husband for weeks. This isn't spontaneous. He's been planning this. 3 scouting trips, testing cell phone dead zones, researching search patterns. She showed Sarah photos taken with a long-range camera. Marcus at the forest, marking trees, testing distances. One particularly damning image showed him practicing his panicked husband face in his car mirror. There's more, Eleanor said quietly. The woman he's leaving you for, Rebecca Martinez? She's done this before. Sarah's blood ran cold. What do you mean? Eleanor pulled out another file. Rebecca's first husband died in a hiking accident in Colorado. Fell off a cliff. She inherited $2 million. Her second husband drowned during a sailing trip in Mexico, another $3 million. Both ruled accidents. She's a black widow, Sarah whispered, and Marcus is her next partner. Or her next victim, Eleanor suggested. Once you're gone, and he inherits your assets, what does he think will happen on their first romantic getaway? Rebecca contacted my husband's security team. They're partners in this. She identifies targets. Richmond Capital provides the cleanup. The bar. Full horror of the situation crashed over Sarah. She wasn't just fighting for her own life. Marcus had walked into a trap of his own making. Outside the shelter, Marcus's calls had grown desperate. Eleanor monitored his movements through hidden cameras she'd installed over the years, trail cameras modified for her protection. He's calling 911, Eleanor observed, watching a small monitor. Right on schedule. Claims you've been missing for an hour, that you were depressed and talking about ending it all. Sarah watched her own husband's performance with horrified fascination. Marcus was crying real tears, his voice breaking as he told the dispatcher about his beloved wife and her struggles with disability. He's convincing, Eleanor admitted. But he made one crucial mistake. What's that? He didn't count on me. Eleanor pulled out a satellite phone. I've been building evidence for something bigger than individual crimes. This forest has been Richmond Capital's dumping ground and money laundering operation. Every accident happens near one of their gold caches from the Garrison bank heist, 20 million that was never recovered. Your husband was part of that? The mastermind. He used the stolen gold to start his firm, laundering it slowly. But maintaining the secret required silencing anyone who stumbled too close. Eleanor showed her a map marked with dozens of locations. Your husband's affair with Rebecca brought him into their web. She scouts victims. They provide disposal. As search and rescue teams began arriving, Eleanor revealed more. I've already sent messages to someone I trust. The evidence is in motion. Who? My daughter Patricia. She thinks I died when she was 3. She's 33 now, an FBI agent specializing in cold cases. She's been investigating Richmond Capital for 5 years. Today, I'm breaking cover to give her everything. They heard new vehicles arriving, not search and rescue. Through the monitors, they saw a black SUV near the abandoned ranger station. 4 men in tactical gear emerged. Richmond's security team, Eleanor confirmed. They're heading for Cache Site 7, the mother lode. Over 10 million in gold coins buried beneath the old fire tower. This is our chance, if we can document them retrieving it. I can't exactly chase them through the forest, Sarah said. Eleanor smiled. You don't need to. She revealed a network of cable systems and mechanical lifts she'd installed throughout her territory, originally for moving supplies, but capable of transporting her wheelchair along predetermined routes. As they moved through Eleanor's transport system, Sarah marveled at the ingenuity. This woman had turned the entire forest into her domain, with hidden paths, defensive positions, and observation posts. They reached a concealed blind overlooking the old fire tower just as Richmond's team arrived. Through binoculars, they watched the men efficiently excavate a hidden chamber, pulling out waterproof cases filled with gold coins. Record everything, Eleanor whispered, handing Sarah a video camera with a telephoto lens. But then something unexpected happened. Marcus appeared on the trail, having somehow slipped away from the search teams. He stumbled upon the mercenaries mid-excavation, his face cycling through confusion, recognition, and terror. Well, one of the mercenaries said. Mr. Chen, Rebecca said you might be a problem. Marcus backed away slowly. I don't know what this is. I'm just looking for my wife. Your wife who you tried to murder? The mercenary laughed. Rebecca told us all about your plan. Sloppy work. Real professionals don't leave digital footprints. The truth hit Marcus like a physical blow. Rebecca, she set me up. Set you up. Boy, you set yourself up. She just guided you along. Dead wife, grieving husband inherits, has accident a few months later. It's her signature move. Richmond Capital appreciates her finding desperate men willing to do the dirty work first. Through the camera, Sarah watched her husband's face crumble as he realized how thoroughly he'd been played. Despite everything, she felt a flicker of pity. The FBI has been closing in, the mercenary continued. We needed to clear out the gold anyway. Your little drama provided perfect cover. All law enforcement focused on searching for a missing disabled woman while we handle business. Speaking of which, another mercenary said, checking his phone, the old man wants this wrapped up. No. Witnesses! Marcus tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. As the mercenaries raised their weapons, Eleanor acted. She pressed a button on a small device, and suddenly the forest erupted with sirens and lights, a system she'd installed to scare off bears, now repurposed. FBI, federal agents, this is a raid. Eleanor's voice boomed from hidden speakers, using recordings she'd made from TV shows. The mercenaries hesitated, confused, looking for agents who weren't there yet. It was enough. In the chaos, Marcus managed to scramble into the underbrush. The mercenaries, unwilling to risk a firefight with federal agents, quickly loaded what gold they could and retreated to their vehicle. That won't fool them for long, Eleanor said grimly. But Patricia will be here soon with real backup. I triggered my emergency beacon an hour ago. The forest erupted with activity. Search helicopters thundered overhead while ground teams spread out in coordinated patterns. But Eleanor and Sarah knew the real action was happening at the gold cache sites. We need to move, Eleanor said urgently. Richmond himself will come when he realizes the FBI is involved. He can't afford to let that gold be found. It directly links him to the Garrison heist and dozens of murders. They relocated to another observation point, this one overlooking the main forest road. Sarah's phone, which had been dead in the cellular dead zone, suddenly came alive with messages as they reached a ridge with signal. Don't answer yet, Eleanor warned. They might be tracking. Too late. Sarah had already seen a text from an unknown number. We have your husband. Want to trade? A photo was attached. Marcus, bloodied but alive, tied up in what looked like a warehouse. It's a trap, Eleanor said immediately. They want you to come out of hiding. I know, Sarah said quietly. But despite everything, I can't just let him die. Eleanor studied her with newfound respect. You're a better person than most, but we're not going to walk into their trap. We're going to spring our own. She pulled out an old Forest Service radio, modified with modern components. Patricia, this is Eagle's Nest. The package is ready for pickup. Bring everyone. A crisp voice responded. Copy that, Eagle's Nest. 20 minutes out. Is the situation contained? Negative. Hostage situation developing. They have Marcus Chen. There was a pause. Understood. Full tactical response authorized. As they waited, Eleanor showed Sarah one final piece of evidence, a safety deposit box key. Cash Site 1 isn't in the forest. It's in the First National Bank downtown. Box 1247 contains documents proving Richmond ordered the deaths of 6 witnesses to the Garrison heist, including a federal judge. Why didn't you turn this over years ago? Because I needed to stay hidden to gather more evidence, and because... Eleanor's voice softened. I wanted Patricia to be the one to bring him down, to give her the justice she became an FBI agent to find. Suddenly they heard vehicles approaching fast. Not the FBI. Too soon. A convoy of black SUVs roared up the forest road. Richmond, Eleanor confirmed, watching through binoculars. He's come himself. The lead SUV stopped, and a distinguished man in his 60s stepped out. Even from a distance, Sarah could see the cold calculation in his movements. He's heading for the ranger station, Eleanor noted. That's where they're holding Marcus. She handed Sarah the satellite phone. Call 911. Report a kidnapping in progress. We need local law enforcement to complicate things until the FBI arrives. As Sarah made the call, trying to sound like a terrified hiker who'd witnessed an abduction, Eleanor prepared for what she'd avoided for decades, a confrontation with the man who'd tried to kill her. What happened next unfolded with shocking speed. The FBI helicopter appeared over the tree line just as local police sirens wailed up the mountain road. Richmond's team, caught between arriving law enforcement and federal agents, found themselves in an impossible position. Through the chaos, a clear voice rang out over a loudspeaker. Richard Richmond, this is Special Agent Patricia Matthews, FBI. You're surrounded. Step away from the vehicles with your hands visible. Eleanor gripped Sarah's hand as she watched her daughter, professional, commanding, wearing the FBI tactical vest with natural authority. Patricia had her mother's green eyes and her father's height, but the steel in her spine was all her own. Richmond tried to bluff. This is a misunderstanding, Agent Matthews. We're conducting a private security operation. Save it, Patricia's voice cut through. We have video evidence of your team excavating stolen gold from the Garrison heist. We have documentation of money laundering, conspiracy to commit murder, and 30 years of racketeering. The mercenaries, realizing the game was over, began laying down their weapons. But Richmond had one last card to play. If you want Chen alive, you'll let me leave, he called out. One vehicle, no pursuit. There was movement in the ranger station, and Marcus was pushed into view, a gun to his head. No deals, Patricia responded. Release the hostage and we can discuss, Patricia. Eleanor's voice, amplified through the same speaker system she'd used earlier, rang across the clearing. Patty, sweetheart, it's Mom. Everything stopped. Patricia's composed mask cracked as she recognized the voice she'd only heard in dreams for 30 years. Don't let him run again, Eleanor continued, stepping out from the concealed blind Sarah beside her. He's taken enough from us. Richmond's face went white as he saw the ghost of his past. In that moment of shock, his grip on the situation loosened. Marcus, desperate, and remembering some moves from college wrestling, twisted away from his distracted captor. Gunfire erupted. FBI agents moved with practiced precision. When the smoke cleared, 3 mercenaries were in custody. One was down, and Richmond was on his knees, hands behind his head, staring at the woman he'd tried to murder 3 decades ago. "Hello, Richard," Eleanor said, walking closer with Sarah rolling beside her. "Surprised to see me?" As Richmond was cuffed and read his rights, mother and daughter finally stood face to face. Patricia's professional composure crumbled entirely. "Mom?" Her voice broke like a child's. "How? All these years?" "I'm sorry," Eleanor whispered, pulling her daughter into an embrace. "I'm so sorry. But I never stopped watching over you, never stopped loving you." Around them, the forest that had hidden so many secrets gave up its last. FBI teams, guided by Eleanor's detailed maps, began recovering millions in stolen gold. Rebecca Martinez was arrested at a private airfield trying to flee with a suitcase full of cash. Marcus, pathetic in his betrayal and defeat, was charged with attempted murder. 6 months later, the Whispering Pines forest had transformed from a place of dark secrets to a symbol of survival and justice. The abandoned ranger station had been converted into a memorial and education center, dedicated to the victims of forest crimes and the woman who'd spent decades ensuring they weren't forgotten. Sarah wheeled herself along the newly paved, accessible trail, breathing in the pine-scented air that no longer held terror for her. Beside her walked Patricia Matthews, no longer just an FBI agent, but a daughter reunited with the mother she'd thought dead. "The physical therapy is helping," Sarah said, demonstrating her increased upper body strength. The attempted murder had paradoxically led to her receiving experimental treatment, funded by the reward money from recovering the Garrison Bank heist gold. She'd never walk again, but she'd found a strength she didn't know she possessed. Eleanor emerged from the forest, looking years younger despite still wearing her handmade forest clothing by choice. The reunion with Patricia had been painful, full of tears and recriminations, but ultimately healing. She traded her hidden shelter for a cabin on the forest edge, where she could maintain her connection to the wilderness while rebuilding her relationship with her daughter. "Any regrets?" Eleanor asked Sarah as they paused at a viewpoint overlooking the valley. Sarah considered the question. Marcus was serving 25 to life, his assets liquidated to pay restitution. Rebecca Martinez faced multiple life sentences as investigators linked her to 5 murders across 3 states. Richmond Capital had been dismantled, with dozens of convictions resulting from Eleanor's evidence. "I regret trusting the wrong person," Sarah finally said. "But if Marcus hadn't brought me here, if he hadn't tried to kill me, none of these crimes would have been solved. You'd still be hiding, Patricia would still be searching, and Richmond would still be free." Eleanor nodded thoughtfully. "The forest has a way of revealing truth, eventually. It just needed the right catalyst." As they continued along the trail, they passed a group of hikers studying informational plaques about the forest's history. Children played on accessible playground, equipment installed with funds from the recovered gold. The Whispering Pines had become a place of healing rather than horror. Patricia's phone buzzed with a message. "Another cold case solved using Mom's records," she announced. "A family in Oregon is getting closure after 15 years. Eleanor smiled, a real smile that transformed her face. Every cold night, every lonely day, worth it to see justice finally done. As the sun set through the towering pines, Painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, the three women stood together, survivor, guardian, and seeker of justice. Where a desperate man had once planned murder, they had found justice, purpose, and family. The whispering pines whispered still, but now their message was different. Not of secrets and sorrow, but of resilience and redemption. And in that transformed forest, three women had found something far more valuable than gold. They had found justice, purpose, and the unbreakable bonds forged in the crucible of shared adversity. If you found this story of survival and justice inspiring, please subscribe to our channel for more extraordinary true stories. Hit the notification bell to stay updated, and remember, sometimes the greatest dangers we face reveal the hidden strengths we never knew we had.